In this section, we're going to look at looping, and we're going to specifically look at the for-in loop. I like to think of loopings in the words of the great band from the 80s, Dead or Alive. You spin me right round, baby, right round and round and round and round and round. And if we get our code wrong, just like that song, it's just going to go round and round and round. So let's make sure we don't get our code wrong. Looping is something we as humans do all the time. We get up and go to work. We go home, we go to bed, we get up and we go to work. And we go around and around and around. With our programs, we want to be able to do the same thing. We don't necessarily want to have to write the same code over and over and over and over. So we're going to look now in Swift at how we can loop our program dependent upon a specific condition. A loop within Swift is a piece of code that is executed several times depending on the condition that we test for. We may need to decide beforehand how many times it loops, or we may not know how many times it loops before we start. And that type of loop, Tristan will talk about in a little while. When a piece of code loops, that's called an iteration. The important thing to note is what's true to make our code iterate, and when do we stop iterating. The two loops we're going to look at in Swift are the for loop and the while loop. Now, specifically in Swift, we tend to use the for loop in a statement which is for in. I just wanted to draw your attention to that in case you go searching or you're reading elsewhere and you're going, I only find the for loop. So the for loop is the general statement within programming, but within Swift, it turns out to be a for-in loop. The for-in loop allows us to loop over something such as a collection or a sequence on a repeated scale. We can go through it over and over and over. And as we go through that sequence, for each item within that sequence, we can execute a piece of code. If nothing else, it's really important as coders, you learn to become lazy. And what do I mean by that? Where you can create a loop that will repeat the same code rather than you having to write that code over and over, it's important that we do that. So I will encourage you throughout the lessons to become lazy. Let's take a look at some code. We have here on the left-hand side 6 lines of code. And those lines of code aren't really complicated. We simply print out a variable's value. But you'll notice it took 6 lines of code to do it. Let's take a look now at a loop that prevents us from having to write 6 lines of code, and we can get away with writing simply 2 lines of code. So here we have our for in statement. For num in 10 ... 15. So you should be starting to see a pattern. What we've used in switch statements, a type of construct, we can also use that same construct here in our loops. So for 10 through 15, and we say print number is num. Now that code we haven't seen before. We have a slash, open bracket, the name of the variable that we've used in our statement. So we've said for num in, and now we say print number is num. And you see our output goes through and prints out exactly the same as previously, but we've got 2 lines of code that does it. Let's have a look at looping using arrays. So in this case, we have an array called lecturers, and our lecturers are David, Tristan, and Steve. and we're going to loop through and print out each person from the array, or each lecturer. So our code says for lecturer in lecturers. Again, I've taken a variable that I've really created called lecturer in lecturers, and we say print lecturer is, and then we use that substitution construct where we have the slash open bracket lecturer close bracket for our print statement, and we have the output lecturer is David, lecturer is Tristan, and lecturer is Steve. We want to also now use our loop alongside a dictionary. And as we create the code for this, you will notice through the couple of slides how it varies just slightly. So we still have a dictionary, and our dictionary is called ages. And in this one we have our keys, which are David, Tristan, and Steve, and we've given them an age of 28, 22, and 45. I wish. Now, in our for loop, we say for person in ages. So we're going to go through and extract each item from our dictionary and print it out. And there we can see the dictionary printout from each loop. And you'll notice the printout says key, Steve, value 45. We have key Tristan and value 22, and so forth. Important to note that, as was pointed out, a dictionary isn't ordered, so it's printed out in a slightly different order from how it was entered. Let's go one more step. Similar code. Our difference is in our print statement, we now say person.key. So all we want from this loop is the key value printed out. And we see that in the output. We have the keys David, Steve, and Tristan. We've used there the dot operator. So we've got person dot key, and there we get only the key. We go one further, and hopefully you've already guessed what we've done. We've now gone person.value. We've looped through in a similar manner, and when we've come to the print statement, we've gone print person.value. And you see in the output there, the output that's come out are just the values 28, 22, and 45. So in our looping here with the for in loops, we've been able to loop through a range, we've looped through an array, and we've looped through a dictionary. These aren't exhaustive as to what we can loop through, but for now, this is where we're going to leave our for in loops.